Hey, we're back. Baseball's back. Willie, did you forget to tell somebody that baseball was back, perhaps?
I got busy. I was preoccupied watching football.
I think you were supposed to tell somebody that baseball was back. I think there's a certain GM that nobody told.
Sometimes people fall asleep on the job. I was talking to somebody today, and she confessed to falling asleep on her job, and I thought it was hilarious. Maybe somebody in Cleveland's front office has fallen asleep. I'm convinced they got a little confused on a memo, though. They added a member to the FO when they needed to add a member to the OF.
Oh, that could be it. Yeah, that just got. Are they using a fax machine? Maybe the fax just kind of cut that part of the ink off.
Browns. Got it at a discount.
The one that didn't work for Hugh Jackson.
Good thing.
Yeah. Who was that trade for? That was
A.J. McCarron, I think his name is.
A.J. McCarron, man.
He was the Bengals backup.
I love that Hugh Jackson still has a job and he's still out there, causing havoc and making terrible decisions. I love that the guy just gets a million chances. Good for him, because nobody deserves
Everybody
more than the guy.
He has as many chances as he's had.
Right? Especially when you screw up as often as he has. This is the Guardians of the Future podcast. I'm Justin Latta. Willie Hood is back with me after it's been a few weeks.
It's been a few weeks. Welcome to the new Browns Football Insider.
Yes, this is Cleveland Browns Football Insider. We're changing our format. We're going to talk completely about quarterbacks who can't even finish the joke. You know what? I can't even make a joke about that because it's just not right. It's just not right. We could talk about how the football team cut its two most veteran leaders to save some money. That sounds like a regular thing in Cleveland that people get mad about. Just now that it's happening in another franchise, right?
Well, they did trade for a wide receiver, I think, from the Cowboys or something like that. I don't know. I don't watch football close enough anymore. They've lost my interest.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I've completely kind of drowned all that stuff out. Unfortunately, it's very annoying. I wish I still had interest in it, but I haven't had any interest on that side of things since the Johnny Manziel era, and they continue to make decisions that are similar to that. So,
yep.
All right, well, that's our show today. Thank you for tuning in. We just wanted to get that out there.
No, that we've ticked everybody off. Have a good one.
Yeah, so we've ticked everyone off. That's enough. No, this really, I was hoping we'd get some good comments and some live viewership to kind of vent about things. I feel like it's been a frustrating. What are we going on here? It's not been quite a week since baseball's back yet. I don't know. It in some cases, I feel like baseball never came back because nothing's just really happened in Cleveland. Like, I know a lot has happened, but for Cleveland, unfortunately, nothing has happened. And we still have things. We're here to talk about things that haven't happened. That's how bad it is. We're back doing this to talk about things that have not happened yet, and that's very frustrating.
Let's speculate about the off season. When does the off season begin?
I don't know. It's still pretty warm out, so it must be fall. So when it snows again, which that could be next week for all we know. I don't know.
Yeah, this weekend.
Right. It could be this weekend. I don't know. It's supposed to be 60 the rest of the week, but yeah, I don't know. It's been very slow, very frustrating. I feel like all this time off. I know it takes a while for things to happen, but a lot of significant moves have happened, and teams play their first games on Friday for the spring finally, and outside of some small stuff that's really has very minor impact, not much has happened. Do you want to go over the moves? Do you want to do some reaction to CBA first? What would you?
Yeah, I've got a question. Is there a trade that you feel like Cleveland could have beat that or Cleveland could have made?
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick, because you know what? Somebody asked me that on Twitter as well, and I know you had a good response to somebody else. I don't know. I think it was Chuck or maybe it was somebody else who said, you know, what package would this look like if Cleveland? It was the Matt Olsen trade.
Yeah.
And you know, Atlanta gave up, and look, they gave up Christian Pache, Shea Langoliers, Ryan Cusick, and Joey Estes. Where they're ranked in terms of like number 1, number 2, whatever, that all varies site to site. You know, whether it's going to be Pipeline, Fangraphs, Baseball America, Prospects Live, Baseball Prospectus, you know, all that kind of changes. So those things are subjective. So you have to take those things with a grain of salt and understand it's not apples to apples, because I would say even before the trade, Cleveland had a better farm system than Atlanta, wouldn't you? I know we tend to be a little bit biased here, but I think even taking a step back and looking from an unbiased view, I think Cleveland had a better farm system than Atlanta before that trade. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think for Cleveland, it's more depth and quality of depth throughout the system. I think we had 28, 29 guys that had a 45 or higher, and then you get a bunch of 40s that almost went into the 50s even. As far as our 40 rated prospects go, I don't know that Atlanta has that quality of depth. I haven't looked at their system in a while. Definitely familiar with Shea Langoliers and some of the other players in their system. But, you know, I kind of tried to equate that, or say the equivalent of that, to what Cleveland has, using MLB.com as a reference point, which is tricky. But, you know, one site had Estes, I think, number 6, if that says anything about his talent. So he was the 14th ranked prospect. They had a 6th ranked prospect, and then number 1 and number 2 prospect, which was Pache, Langoliers, and then Cusick, which was the 6th ranked prospect. I said for Cleveland, that would equate to something like, you know, George Valera, Daniel Espino, Gavin Williams, and Brian Lavastida, which is using the same formula, so to speak, that the Oakland A's received as a return, which is 1 outfielder, 1 catcher, and 2 pitchers. So they're kind of sticking with the same scenario and trying to stick with rankings, saying that's the kind of return that they would get. And I just don't see Cleveland ready to give up that sort of package for a player of Olsen's ability. Now, if Olsen had the 8 years of control that he does now, I think that would have been different. I suspect that Oakland got as much as they did because they were already in conversations with Olsen, assuming that the A's gave them permission to negotiate with him. They probably gave him a few day window. They used that window to work out this deal, which was ultimately signed today. Good deal for Olsen. I think it's a good deal for the Athletics. Hate to see Freddie leave Atlanta. I know the fans down there will be disappointed too. Game of baseball is tough sometimes, you know. You have to make decisions, and that means letting people walk when you don't want to see them go, and bringing in new talent sometimes. And they did bring in one of the most talented one of the most talented first basemen in baseball is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, from that perspective, I think that Atlanta got the better of that deal as far as, you know, Freddie Freeman is obviously a legend in Atlanta and is a really great ball player. Matt Olsen is probably better for them long term at this point,
Yep.
You know, given the age difference. And it sounds like they offered Olsen roughly the same contract they offered Freddie Freeman. He just turned. I think they gave Freddie $5 and $150, and he said no. And you know, he's 32, and Matt Olsen's I think 28 or something.
Yep.
You know, they gave him an 8-year deal, so that's a little bit different. But it was 168, and I think Freddie Freeman's going to get like $6 and $180, so it's a little short of a contract, and it goes a little bit later in his career because he's older, and it's a little more money in the short term. I don't know, they could have gone wrong either way, but you as hard as it is for Atlanta fans to swallow, I think they upgraded first base. The problem is, did they trade a lot of guys that could help their roster in the short term? Like, would they be better off with Freddie and those prospects, or are they better off with Matt Olsen? I don't know, but that's not the point. I saw your comp on the trade, and I don't think you're wrong using that same formula. People ask that all the time about trades, and I'm like, okay, well, rankings are subjective, like I said, from site to site, depending on who you want to trust. And B, Atlanta, I don't think, like you said, Atlanta's system is not as deep as Cleveland. So Cleveland could have traded Espino, Valera, and Lavastida, and who was there pitching? Williams? Did you say Gavin Williams?
Yeah. Oof. Maybe we're talking Logan T. Allen or Cody Morris instead of Williams. I think that's probably your difference in quality, though. Overall talent, maybe too, because I view Lavastida as a potential fringe backup, possible starter catcher, but I don't think he's an everyday catcher. In my opinion, I don't think he's there yet. Could he develop? Yes. He's still 23. That's the thing with these prospects. You never know. But I'll also point out that with Freeman leaving Atlanta, Atlanta's going to pick up that comp pick, and with that pick also a few $1 million for the draft. So in essence, they're going to wash losing Kusick. So losing Ryan Kusick is a wash, kind of the way I see it. So to me, it's a good play for Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta comes out pretty sweet, and Oakland gets a pretty relative now return too. I think Estes still needs some more time. I've not seen a whole lot of him. I know he's a pretty talented prep arm from a few years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to make those comparisons. Like I said, systems are different. I think Christian Pache probably rates, I don't know, it depends on how much you believe in the hit tool for him, if he's going to hit, because obviously he's an elite defensive center fielder. Yeah, I mean, he could be an average hitter. But look, if he's even an average hitter, he's probably a 55 overall because that defense and speed are so good.
I'd give his bat a 45, but I mean, that's my opinion of him. I just think he's going to be an excellent player with some speed out in center field. He'll be an exciting player for Oakland. And if he hits 240, 250, plays great defense, very valuable piece for them.
So that almost sounds like he is a little bit lesser version of Miles Straw then.
Could be.
Yeah. I mean, you said Miles Straw is like a 260, 270 hitter. Who plays great defense and has a lot and can steal bases. Pache, if you're saying he's a 260 or 250 or 240 hitter, that's not quite as much. But it's so hard. I think the reason I think it's so hard to compare these things is because, like I said, Cleveland's system is built differently than Atlanta's. Cleveland, and we don't know if the ask of Cleveland was the same ask of Atlanta, because we've seen this before. I remember, it feels like eons ago now because some of these players are out of baseball now, but I remember it might have been the 2015 offseason. I remember the Reds were looking to trade Todd Frazier, and there's rumors going around about how the Reds wanted Danny Salazar, they wanted Clint Frazier, and they wanted some other pitcher too. I think they wanted Mike Clevenger or something, or whoever it was. And Bradley Zimmer at the time, and everyone's like, no, that's crazy. That's too much for Todd Frazier. And then they ended up trading Todd Frazier for like pennies on the dollar. And everyone's like, well, why didn't the Indians beat this? And it's like, well, it's reasonable to say that they asked for different things in the system, because look, in 2015, the Indian system wasn't as good as it is now. And they could have easily sustained this if they made this trade. It would have been painful, but they could have taken the hit and still had a very good system. But like you said, for 2 years of control, they're probably thinking they're not willing to sacrifice that much. But we don't know how they matched up, because Oakland could have preferred Christian Pache to George Valera. They could have. I mean, look, I think the other thing is too, because of how bad the system has developed outfielders, I don't think there's a trade where an outfielder's on the table. I don't think they ever trade Valera or maybe even Steven Kwan because they've been so bad at developing outfielders, they can't afford to trade from that position. They can trade from shortstops because we know they have a lot of that, and they can trade for pitching. So if Oakland didn't want one of those middle infield prospects as the headliner, maybe they preferred Pache. The pitching, I'm sure Cleveland could have matched. I mean, Cusick, I don't really know much about yet. I'm just going by Fangraphs board. They've got him at a 45. Cleveland's got plenty of 45 arms. Interesting that, Oakland didn't want Drew Waters, maybe. Or maybe Atlanta didn't want to include him, and that's why they gave somebody else up. I don't know. We just don't know how they would match up in a trade. I think Langoliers is definitely a better defender than Lavastida by far. That's a big deal for Oakland because they already have a Gold Glove catcher who they're probably going to trade, right? So they can replace him with Shea Langoliers. Bo Naylor is probably more of a question mark on both ends of the ball right now than Shea Langoliers, so I give him that. I mean, yes, could Cleveland have given them a package that would have worked? Probably. But would they have had to pay more because, Atlanta offered different things and they preferred Atlanta's package, and Atlanta was going to take the time to negotiate with Matt Olsen on an extension? That's the only reason they're going to trade for him. Because, look, maybe Atlanta, like you said, maybe Atlanta doesn't trade for him if they don't get a chance to negotiate an extension. They have a window, and they got it done. Maybe if they're not afforded that ability, they don't give up as much, right?
Yeah, I think so. I really do believe that played a role in it, and that's why we saw Olsen with the extension today. They had to plan and move on from Freeman, and they knew that. They also wanted to spend some of the money that they brought in from winning the championship last year, and I can't remember the name of the company that owns the Braves now, but they're flush with money, especially after winning the World Series this year. And they invested
Right.
back in the team. And it's unfortunate to see, like I said, Freeman go, but they also put eight years down on Olsen now after acquiring him. And I just suspect. I don't know. Maybe it'll come out, maybe it won't. But I just think that was a scenario where they had that opportunity. They had a few days to negotiate and were able to pull off the deal. Just my opinion.
No, I think that makes a ton of sense. You're right, and I don't think Cleveland, no matter what they were doing, was going to offer Matt Olsen that kind of money and that kind of contract.
No. Not until
so they would have been
Harris are on, and we don't know then either. So
right, yeah. I mean, Cleveland would have made the trade, assuming that they were only going to have Olsen for 2 years, which may have changed what their package was going to be, and that's why Atlanta offered more because, like you said, they had the ability to extend him. And okay, I was going to bring this up earlier. Atlanta just signed Colin Mchugh, and I saw a couple people saying this earlier. Colin Mchugh, I thought, was a good bullpen fit for Cleveland.
Yep.
But he's off the board too, so that's another guy we can cross off the list. We'll get to more of that later.
Brian Shaw will be back. No worries. Brian Shaw will be back. You are really choosing violence today with that. Someone asked you a question. You were like, Brian Shaw, and I'm like, man, that was really your answer. You were just really trying to stir things up today, man. That's concerning. If Brian Shaw hasn't signed anywhere, he might just show up to Goodyear. Man, I'm telling you, it's going to happen.
You know what's going to happen? This is what's going to happen. Brian Shaw is going to show up to Goodyear with his baseball stuff, with his gear. He's going to bring his bag. He's going to pull a William Hayes. He's going to show up to camp, and he is just going to start pitching. And they're like, "Oh, Brian, why are you here?" And he's just going to be
I don't even think anybody would notice,
Be like, "Oh yeah, Brian Shaw's here. This makes a ton of sense. He's always here." Like they're just going to assume they re-signed him. Like that, a coach is going to come out and ask him why he's throwing a bullpen, or Austin Hedges is going to be catching him, and is going to be like, "I don't remember talking about signing him, but yeah, it's Brian Shaw. Of course we re-signed him." Like he's just going to show up and start pitching. No, is that Willie Mays Hayes or what is that?
I think it was Willie Mays Hayes that just showed up. He woke up late and outran somebody.
Well, that was the pajamas thing, but there was somebody else who, like, he wasn't invited. He wasn't signed or invited. And he just showed. Maybe he did show up. And they didn't sign him, and they put his. I don't know. I know that I should know better than
I've watched that movie.
I know. Well, you've got plenty of time because it's not like the Guardians are doing anything. You had plenty of time over the last 2 months.
Justin, we got 2 catchers. I've been saying they need catching. They need to upgrade catching, and they brought in 2 catchers. Man, come on.
Were these 2 guys the top of your list? Well, to be fair, David Frye was somewhere on one of your lists.
What's that?
David Frye was on one of your lists.
Yes, he was. He was one of the guys that I mentioned. Luke Mail, I actually joked around with you because he's been in Pittsburgh, he's been in Toronto, and both organizations function somewhat like Cleveland. I thought Luke Mail makes sense because he's a defensive-oriented catcher. So I mentioned him to you before, and it was a joke that, hey, they're going to go out and sign Luke Mail, and that's going to be the backup catcher this year. And then it turns out they signed Luke Mail as backup catcher. Then I mentioned Corey Howell and David Frye.
And you just joked up Brian Shaw, so that's going to happen now. Way to go. If they sign Brian Shaw, I am literally going to tweet that to everybody that it is your fault.
I willed the Trevor Stephan thing to happen last year, too. I mentioned him at some point talking to someone and said that Trevor Stephan was an arm that, what put me onto it was Jeff Ellis mentioned Cleveland liking him, I think. And I remembered that, and I thought, hey, he's a guy that Cleveland liked a few years ago. I would not be surprised if they revisit bringing in Trevor Stephan. So, lo and behold, they picked him in the Rule 5. I mentioned David Frye and I mentioned Corey Howell. So now Cleveland has to pull off a trade for minor league outfielder Corey Howell from the Braves too. So
you're all over it, man. You're all over it. You almost solved the lockout too. I mean, what was one of the proposals you put out there, or you were joking about, ended up in the deal? We're talking about kicking the can down the road with the international draft.
Yeah.
And then I said,
10 minutes later, they did what I said.
Yes, and I said, I don't think there's going to be an agreement until the owners agree to a $50 million pre-arbitration bonus pool, and they got to $50 million. And I said that was a magic number.
You were saying that for weeks,
right? Because the players wanted 100, and the owners were offering like 30 or 40, and I'm like, okay, they just got to get to 50, it'll be fine. And they did.
Yeah,
and then the international
negotiation trick. They started high. I think they got the 50 that they wanted. I think 50 was the number and was probably always the number. I just never thought the owners would give that to them.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you meet people in the middle, right? Crazy how that works. I think they call that negotiating. Not sure. Yeah, I didn't go to school for that.
I think this was a player-friendly deal. I feel like the players made up a lot of ground and made some serious gains this time through getting a higher base salary, I think over $100,000 higher, getting a new pre-arb pool. Now, I can't remember what the pre-arb percentage of players is that's actually going to receive from that pool. Is it still 22% or is it a higher number?
Well, no, it's all pre-arb. I mean, it's anybody who doesn't qualify. So if one of the players
all players,
anybody who is not arbitration eligible, it'll be spread across. That's only if these players qualify for awards. And you can go to GuardiansBaseballInsider.com. You can find I did a little co-authored piece with Arthur Kinney breaking down the entire CBA and how it affects Cleveland. So all the details are on our site on that article, but you can. I think it's spread across only pre-arbitration. So if you're a Super 2 eligible player, you won't be eligible for that bonus pool, which is still 22%, like you said. But if they only get that money if they finish somewhere in the awards, like if you finish, top 3 in Rookie of the Year or MVP or Cy Young. So not just any pre-arbitration players, the award-winning ones are guys who finish somewhere in the award voting. So some of that money might not get paid out at all. And I don't know if it rolls over, how that all works, but at least these young players who do perform well are getting paid for. Shane Bieber won the Cy Young in 2020 as a pre-arbitration eligible player and, didn't see an extra dime for it based off of that. Yeah. So under this, he would. So that was a good thing in the middle. I think you're right. It was it's a player-friendly deal in terms of they definitely got a better deal this time than they did the last, like, I don't know, 3-4 cycles at this point.
Yep.
And you know, it's probably always going to be owner-friendly. That's just how this works because they have the money, they have the control of the team. The owners hire right. They're responsible for who the commissioner is. The players have no say in who the commissioner is. So it's always going to be owner league leaning, but you know, at least now the players got more back in the deal than they ever had before, and this sets them up well for the next round. The next round might be ugly again. I don't know. It's 6 years away, but Rob Manfred claims that after this whole ordeal that, you know, he wants to have a better relationship with the players, that he called Tony Clark right after the deal was signed to say, hey, we should work together better and work to create a better collaboration with the players and have a better relationship. We'll see if he follows through on that. I don't know.
Well,
I'm not going to 6 years. We will talk about it.
I tweeted this and mentioned it to you, but you want to do that, involve the players in the creation of the international draft, bring in David Ortiz and some well-renowned Latino American players, because that is the dynamic that you're really focusing on. I think 70 or 80% of the players come out of Latin America. So focus on some Latin American players that will have a lot of sway and that are highly influential with the players, kind of like David Ortiz is. You know, he is well respected amongst the players, and he's somebody who I think would be on the forefront, or should be on the forefront of helping develop that international draft. If you really want to do that, that's how you do it. Is you let the players buy in by being inclusive with the players. Include some of the most well-respected players and pick their minds, but also, you know, bring them in on a consultant role and pay them to do the job.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to let that happen, because you have to clean some things up. That was the biggest, I would say the biggest sticking point, but it almost became the sticking point for everything, because a lot of Latin players were against the draft because it takes away some control they have over going to certain teams and you know, causing them to bid up for players getting more money because the draft is going to be hard slotted or soft slots. I don't know. And they don't want that. But at the same time, there's a lot of shady things that go on in the international signing period. And some of that is because Major League Baseball doesn't police its own dealings. They kind of let these things go unchecked because it's
they seem to pick and choose, like with Atlanta a few years ago, and they busted Atlanta's chops, which is, you know, the result were, I think, 3 years banned from signing any international talent, which definitely affected their talent pool to pull from. I don't remember if they penalized them on the draft end of it or not. I don't think that they did, but I think it was all purely international related. But that's pretty significant at the time because they had a lot more freedom to just sign and spend it as they wanted to. And then they implemented this slot system afterwards. I do think an international draft is a good thing. I don't really like the rotating divisions or groups that they're going to have in there. I don't like that idea. I think if you're going to have a draft, do it with a traditional draft too. Let teams get the best talent into their organizations. If you're really concerned about rebuilding, this sounds like one of those things from owners like Steinbrenner and from the Dodgers owners and stuff like that, where they want a fair crack at the first pick rather than just doing what I think is the smart thing to do, which is let rebuilding teams get as much talent into their systems as possible. And, you know, there's some guys that come through every year who are older and are going to be more league ready quickly, you know, with Cespedes' brother last year, even. I can't remember if he's debuted or not, but he was an older player, I think 23 years old. There's been some international talent come through that would be on teams like the Baltimore Orioles, who are in the middle of a rebuild, and not a lot of international players have wanted to go to because they weren't active in the international market for years. And now suddenly they're actually trying to invest some of that money into the international market, and they're kind of having to pay a little bit extra to do so.
I wonder if that would include, because you talked about Cuban players, and obviously, Dominican Republic, Venezuela. Would that include like players from like Korea, like China, like Japan? You have Seiya Suzuki coming over this year. Is he subject to the international draft, or players like that in the future?
My understanding he would not be, because I believe he's over the age of 25. I think anybody between 16 and 23 would be draft eligible. So anyone over 23, anyone over 23, I think would be declared a free agent if they've already played in a pro league like that. And that confuses me, but because some of these younger players in Cuba have played professionally in the national series down there. And, they're required to meet the requirements of the current age group, so to speak. I think the ones over that are like Suzuki, who you mentioned, a player like him. Cespedes, if he'd have been older, if he'd have been 25, I think he would have just been a straight out free agent like Suzuki is. That's the thing, though, is you don't have very many of these players coming in older. The ones that do are usually, they're not, your quality talent, or, they're not going to be big quality talents.
Yeah. Yeah, you're definitely getting more young guys for sure than you would for older. There are examples of guys in Cuba like Cespedes and I'm trying to think of some others. Oscar Colas, who just got signed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know what they'll do. It's tough. Like you said, I think they definitely have to have somebody who represents the voice down there, who can make sure this is done right if they're going to do this, because it could clean up it could take away some issues. You have these, what do they call them, Buscones? These trainers that they're skimming, like, Jim Bowden got fired from being a GM because he was skimming bonuses away from international players. Well, these trainers, these Buscones, as they call them, are doing the same thing. And they're pre-arranging deals with teams for guys that are kids that are 13 years old, even though they're not allowed to sign until they're 16. Like it's always the worst kept secret, like before International Signing Day, that like Fangraphs always has, or Baseball America always has their board up for international signings, and it's like a year ahead of time, and they're like, "Oh, a player expected to sign with this team." It's like, well, he's not even eligible to sign, so how could they have? The agreement's not supposed to be allowed to be in place, and that's where the shady stuff goes on. And like you said, Major League Baseball picks and chooses how they enforce their rules, and that's one of them they don't bother to check on. So that's one of the ways you hope that the draft could clean up all this stuff. And the other way, I don't know. I need to see more details about it. I hope that's what they do, but it does take away the qualifying offer from, if they do this, if they agree to the international draft. That's good for teams like Cleveland, because if they lose a free agent, they can still get a draft pick for losing a free agent. They go back to the system where I think an article XXB free agent gets signed over like 30 or 50 million. They can recoup a comp pick. But if they sign a free agent, the qualifying offer is gone, they don't surrender a pick, which is how it should be, because why should you penalize a team for signing a free agent? I get giving a comp pick to teams that lose one, but they never should have penalized teams for signing free agents. So that's a good move, in my opinion. And it's good for Cleveland.
Yeah, and that's something that would prevent Cleveland, for example, from signing a player, in my opinion, like Michael Conforto, who, if he's going to cost you a draft pick, Cleveland's not going to want to do that, especially in a deep draft. And, that's Cleveland's sweet spot, is coming through the farm system and building that talent or developing talent. They've really relied on that the last few years. Look at the pitching staff, look at the team in general. How many of them have been recent draft picks? I think the farm system is starting to produce, and we're going to see the fruits of that in the next few years, even with guys like Arias and Freeman, Valera, Espino, Williams, maybe Doug Nikhazy, who I wrote up, I think was featured yesterday. Bo Naylor. A lot of these guys are guys that they drafted, or Arias that, of course, they acquired through trade, but they've taken time to develop him in the system. So, I don't see Cleveland being a team that will want to lose a draft pick. But with that being said, for example, let's say that they let Francisco Lindor play out his contract rather than trading him when they did. He became a free agent and signed the $300 million deal with the Mets. Cleveland would get, under the new rules, Cleveland will get a comp pick and a third round pick, which is more compensation than what they receive under the current system with just one pick. I actually like that because this new system, when it is in place, will compensate teams based on whether it's a large market team, whether it's a small market team, and how much the player actually signs for. Something also that, I'd mentioned that before. I think a player over $150 million is worth at least 3 picks, but getting 2 picks for a player of that quality is a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you're not basing it on what the team thinks of them because you're not worried about, is the team going to worry about extending someone the qualifying offer because they want the pick back? But it's more based on the value of the player. If the Mets see Francisco Lindor as a $300 million player, then Cleveland is not, they're not fairly compensated, but they're compensated better because of multiple picks because they went over a certain dollar amount. But the Mets aren't penalized.
Let's play this out and use Jose Ramirez as an obvious choice for, let's say in 2 years, Cleveland decides we're not able to extend him because he wants $400 million. We're not going to do that. He's probably not asking for that, but that's not the point. Let's say they let him play out his contract knowing that they have this new system in place. And the system's not expected to be in place before then, so no worries for people on that end. Let's hope and pray for an extension in the meantime. But when the new system is in place, using Jose Ramirez as the example, you can let him play out his contract knowing that you're going to get back 2 picks. So you're going to get back a compensation pick, and then you would get a third round pick. Now, let's use that to look at the players that in Oakland got yesterday from Atlanta. So your comp pick is going to be a Ryan Cusack type of pick, and your third round guy will probably be like a Joey Estes. Langoliers was a top 10 draft pick, and Pache was an international free agent. My whole point in saying this, though, is you're going to get back talent that will offset some of the talent that you could probably get through trading a player of that quality. It makes teams like Cleveland a little bit more motivated to let players play out their contract. One of the few things I think that actually plays to the small market team's favor in this deal. But I'll leave that there.
Yeah, we'll see. I think signing extensions is going to be a little bit harder from the beginning for players, is because if players, and I'm not saying they're getting paid better, they will be getting paid better. $700,000 compared to what the owners rake in a year is not a lot, obviously, but that's what they're starting at. But you are getting players paid better in the early years than they have been, and you have the pre-arb bonus pool. So I wonder if maybe players are like, okay, I'm getting more money in my pre-arb. I'm getting potentially some award money. Do I just kind of, get that money and then wait on my arbitration years and cash in that way versus signing an extension? I wonder, because Cleveland's bread and butter for extensions was always pre-arb deals, I wonder if that's a deterrent for them, for players to sign pre-arb deals, which isn't exactly beneficial to Cleveland because they never operated any other way, because Jose Ramirez was a pre-arb player. Jason Kipnis. I'm trying to think, Corey Kluber was a pre-arb deal, and he took almost nothing. Carlos Carrasco took a second deal, but it's because he wanted to stay, and they traded him anyway. All those are pre-arb deals. I wonder if those kind of dry up a little bit, or you've really got to offer more because, players know, okay, $700,000 for my first year, $740 or whatever for my next year, and if I win some awards, I get some money. If I'm a good young player, I'm banking on myself.
Yeah, I think you can offset that. If I'm running a team the way I do, is either just offer another $1 million or offer incentives where, hey, I know you just signed this 4-year deal. You just won the Cy Young. Because you won the Cy Young, you just kicked in another $500,000. So there's ways to offset that. You pitch 30 games, there's $250,000. You were elected to the All-Star team, $250,000. So, I mean, you can quickly cover that just by doing little things like that. And if I was a player, I would want incentives in my deal no matter what, So on top of a normal contract, give me any bonuses I can earn.
Yeah, that's true. They'd have to work it in a way to make that work, to make that more feasible, I guess. And they could, or it wouldn't change much. I just wonder if players will have a chance to bet on themselves a little bit more versus doing something like that. Anything else in the CBA? I have to go back and look at the article myself, honestly. Was there anything on the top of your head that sticks out? We talked about the comp picks, the pre-arb bonus pool. Obviously, the canceled Rule 5 draft really benefits Cleveland. We've already talked about that at length. The extra playoff spot. I mean, we know what that means.
One thing I didn't hear mentioned, and I haven't to this point, but is the use of something tacky stuff, like the spider. I can't remember what you call it. The spider glue or whatever it is they were calling it that they were using to get a good grip on the ball.
Spider tack, yeah.
That never seems like that was on the table. I think it should have been for player safety. I am definitely a proponent for pitchers to have something to use, rather than just the rosin bag. I don't believe in just using basically chalk to dry your hands off and get a good grip on the ball.
Yeah, I think a lot of players use sunscreen and rosin, and that's generally, how are you going to play sunscreen? Like, if you're a baseball player and you're playing on a Sunday afternoon, I'm wearing sunscreen. I have fair skin.
I don't care what your skin tone is. If you want to wear sunscreen just to protect yourself from sun cancer, you should be able to. I mean, I think that's overdoing it. Guys sweat, out there on the mound. They're dripping sweat, especially in the summertime. I mean, you're going to have fluid on the ball. So if they're dripping sweat on the ball, if they spit on their hands, guess what? They're touching the ball.
Yeah. If you're wearing sunscreen at night in April, I guess that's a little weird. People are going to look at that weird, but I don't know. I agree with you. I think we saw some injuries last year with the lack of a grip. And because Major League Baseball doesn't have consistent seams and the way that baseballs are made, they're not consistent. So players have to get used to that.
I think Tyler Glasnow cited that as the reason that he had to have Tommy John surgery, because he said that he was using that pronator, which is right there in your elbow, and pressing on the ball harder, which you get a firmer grip right here, and it tore that muscle, and that here he is with I think his second Tommy John surgery now because of it.
Yeah, and that you're right, that hasn't been mentioned at all. So hopefully they can figure something out when it comes to that. That is interesting. Oh, more Ken Rosenthal rumors. Blue Jays currently view their chances on Schwarber as better than their chances on Freddie Freeman. Competition for Schwarber remains intense with the Phillies in the mix. Kyle Schwarber would be great to have for Cleveland too, but haven't been connected to him yet. The only guys they've been connected to, so let's get to some of that. We talked about Matt Olson a little bit. I feel like I felt like they could have beaten Atlanta's offer, but would it have been as palatable because they weren't going to sign to that extension? Yes, it would have been a lot tougher. So I'm okay with that. The Jesse Winker thing was interesting because basically Seattle kind of, I don't want to say they bought Jesse Winker, but they agreed to take on all of Eugenio Suarez's money, and his contract's not totally underwater. I mean, he's
a decent player, but
yeah, he's got a lot of power. He hasn't been as good. He hasn't been as good outside of Great American Ballpark. I'd have to look at the splits again and park factors and all that, but I saw somebody else points out the other day that he's been playing shortstop a little bit the last 2 years. That's tanked his defensive value because he's not a shortstop. And his average cratered last year, which was not good, but I think they'll get something out of him where he won't be a total zero. So they took his contract on to get Jesse Winker, but Suarez isn't a bad player. They gave Justin Dunn, who, a fifth starter, maybe a setup guy. Brandon Williamson, who's a number 3 potentially.
Yeah.
And who was the other player?
3,
it was
I don't know, possibly a bullpen arm with Williamson. Then they got Jake Fraley, and then to quote what Rosenthal said, they've got a player to be named later that they're excited about. So whatever that means, it might be a really good young player. Who knows?
Yeah, and Cleveland could have done that too, but there was no way they were taking on Suarez's contract.
No.
They would have had to given up more to get Winker if they weren't going to take that contract on. But I mean, Cincinnati was clearly motivated to give up salary. They've given up Sonny Gray. Who else have they given up already? I mean, they
Barnhart, Nick Castellanos, Wade Miley.
They put Wade Miley on waivers.
And that was just a money-saving deal. And I mean, lefties that can be your fifth starter in log innings, I think, have value. But it was kind of like what happened with Brad Hand. Hate to bring that up, but Cleveland lost Brad Hand for nothing, and then Brad Hand turned around and ended up getting more money out of all of it because he got the $1 million option from Cleveland, and then I think it was over $10 million to sign with Washington. So in the end, it turned out to be a good thing for Brad Hand.
Yeah, and he hasn't signed. He signed the Phillies today, didn't he?
I think yesterday with the Phillies for $6 million.
Good for him. Colin Mchugh, by the way, only got 2 years and $10 million, $6 million option for 2024. So, pretty fair deal for Colin Mchugh. So. Yeah, he's a bit of an
Cleveland going for a big investment on a reliever. Although I'd like to see him sign Andrew Chafin. That'd be a perfect fit, and he's an Ohio guy.
Brian Shaw.
Brian Shaw it is.
I'm telling you.
The weatherman, we're going to give him an extension.
Brian Shaw is in Goodyear. I'm telling you, he's already in Goodyear. He's just waiting till Friday to show up. And when Tito, taps the right hand to go to the bullpen on Friday for his first reliever, right, he's going to come sprinting out, and it's going to be Shaw, and Tito's going to be like, oh, yeah, Brian Shaw's here. Okay, that makes sense. That's just going to happen. I'm telling you, he's just going to show up. Yeah, so Cleveland was not going to take on the Winker or the Suarez contract to get Winker. They would have had to give up more to do it, but I don't know. It seems like the Reds really want to save some money. So who knows if the Reds would even consider trading Winker without tying Suarez to the deal?
Yeah.
Because otherwise they would have had to. Because who else are they going to tie him to? Are they going to tie him to Luis Castillo? I don't know. And Cleveland's got nowhere to put.
No, they're not going to tank his value. And they'll probably hold him mid-season, then deal him at mid-season. Tyler Mahle only has, I think, 1 year left. Amir Garrett, I don't think you're going to get Amir Garrett either. I think it was either Sonny Gray, because he's a decent pitcher, or Jesse Winker. And, it went with Jesse Winker. Kind of weighed him down and that return down for them. But they got ultimately out of $35 million over the next 3 years, which is what it was really about. Yeah, so that took Cleveland out of the deal, obviously. And Cleveland had nowhere to play Suarez. I guess you could have, played Reyes in the outfield some and use Suarez at DH, or put him at third and give Ramirez a day off to DH, and maybe Suarez can play some first. I don't know. They could have been creative to fit him, but, yeah, they were never going to pay that contract and also get the prospects to get Winker. So that deal took them out of it. Which would rule out a trade for Eric Hosmer. I know some people have said it wasn't Cleveland trade for Eric Hosmer and get prospects with him and eat the salary, because they're not going to take that much on. There's no future commitments after this year. Obviously, Jose Ramirez has an option year next year, but this gives them a ton of payroll flexibility, and they weren't going to kind of stifle themselves in their ability to build the roster the way that they want to with a Suarez contract on there. I will point out too, though, a lot of the players on the team are starting to become ARB eligible. You have Bieber, Quantrill, Reyes, just to name a few. All of these guys are now ARB 1. Next year they're ARB 2, so their salaries are going to be growing, and payroll is going to grow naturally with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bieber is ARB 1 this year. He's ARB 2 next year, and Zimmer, if he's still here, who knows? You said Mercado, if he's still here, Plesac, Straw. Yeah. There are some guys to consider that way, but yeah, I don't want Eric Hosmer. You would have to give me like Juan Soto or Shohei Ohtani to take on Eric Hosmer. There's just no chance. I could never enjoy that trade unless I had one of those guys join.
I would do Will Myers for Robert Hassel or Luis Camposano. I think Myers only has 1 year on his deal and then an option for next year. It's a total of $21 million eating the option year for next year.
Yeah, it's a $13 million average. I don't know. The problem is Will Myers is probably a better hitter than Bradley Zimmer, but he's got terrible defensive value, and both Mercado and Zimmer are projected for more FWAR than Myers is, according to Zips. And year-to-year WAR isn't really something you want to hang your hat on, but okay, a 103 weighted runs created plus mark is better than Zimmer and Mercado's projection. So I guess offensively you're getting more value, but I don't know, maybe they should just punt the defense and say, who cares? I would do that too. I guess in theory, if you don't have to give up much to get Myers and you get Robert Hassel in the process, you're not giving up much and you're gaining a prospect at a position you have a hard time developing, and in the meantime, Will Myers is unfortunately an upgrade for you. I guess that makes sense. And we know Cleveland is okay dealing with San Diego. So maybe that's in play. I don't know. Here's the other thing I'm having a hard time dealing with. They said this before the lockout started, and Chris Antonetti said it again on the first day. Reporters were allowed to talk to him at spring training. He said, we continue to have the payroll flexibility to make additions. My question about that is, though, last year, and I said this to you earlier, last year that payroll flexibility they had, quote-unquote payroll flexibility, was adding Cesar Hernandez and Eddie Rosario. To me, I think those are moves that you make within the look, they paid Cesar what? $6 million?
$5 million, I think it was last year.
$5 million, and they paid
they actually took
Rosario $9 million?
Yeah, and they gave him a pay cut to bring him back.
Right. So he made even less money last year than he did in the year before. But they gave what, $9 million to Eddie Rosario? To me, those are okay. So 7. So those are bargain deals anyway. Yeah, those are not. That's
Jock Peterson. Jock Peterson is going to fall in that range. If Cleveland signs him, he's one player that that Cleveland was associated with, if we believe the rumors that were out there over the weekend.
Yeah, I guess. It doesn't it makes sense that they're connected to him. The checking in, and look, they're probably going to call every agent and say, hey, what is your client looking for? Maybe we're a match, like you talked about with Trevor Story. Like, I don't believe that for a second, but I'm sure they called and were like, hey, what is Trevor looking for? Well, Trevor's looking for 7 years, $190 million. Okay, thanks. See you later. That's quote unquote checking in. So you can say, hey, we checked in on Trevor Story. It doesn't mean we're interested. We just wanted to see what his price was. So I'm not buying that. I don't know. I'm still sticking with Jeff Passan or Ken Rosenthal, and everybody else is kind of noise right now.
Yes, that's the best approach right now. One of those two, you're good. And the only reason you don't mention John Heyman is because he has you blocked. So
that's fine. I can still see him on other accounts, and I don't even need to see them because he only has the Boris scoops. We're not signing. Cleveland's not signing a Boris client.
No. So don't even pay attention to Heyman.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the last
Jeff
one? They got
Bassler, Ken
Michael Bourne,
Rosenthal.
maybe?
Yeah, Michael Bourne. Somebody asked that this morning. I said, "What's the last time they signed a Boris client?" I said, "Michael Bourne." Well, Conforto is a Boris client. So, and he has the qualifying offer attached. So forget it.
Yeah, not happening.
Forget Michael Conforto.
So where did they go from here then?
I mean, Jock Peterson does make sense, right? I think he's this year's Eddie Rosario. Yeah. I like him a little bit better than Rosario. I think a lot of people like Jock Peterson. I liked him for a while.
I have.
The weird thing is, he's like a more consistent Zimmer. I think Jock Peterson is what we thought Zimmer was going to be.
Yep.
And never got there. And Jock Peterson's not really consistent as he used to be, but he's more consistent than Zimmer. These are small upgrades. This is what I'm talking about.
How about I don't if he becomes available?
No thanks. I'm good. This team does not need Luke Voigt, not unless the Yankees are paying. Look, Luke Voigt has played like over 100 games once in his career. 2019, Luke Voigt played 118 games. His next best season was last year at 68 games, and he's 31. So you're telling me this guy is already a first baseman, already has injury issues, and he's 31 on the wrong side of 30? No. That's just not the flexibility.
I think he's somebody that the team might have interest in, though. Looking back, I think he had a 30 home run season a few years ago. If they feel like that price is cheap, that might be somebody that they would bring in. Is he a lefty? I can't remember if he hits left-handed or not. I think he does.
He's right-handed.
Oh, is he? I must be thinking of somebody else then.
He's a right first baseman. He strikes out a ton. 30% strikeout rate last year. So you're going to pair him with Bobby Bradley and you're going to win power progressive field? Hey, okay. You bring in Luke Voigt, you pair him with Bobby Bradley, you strike out a crap ton, you convert that wind energy.
What you're saying is they already have Luke Voigt on the roster and Bobby Bradley.
I don't know. I don't know about that. Luke Voigt probably has a better hit tool than Bobby Bradley, unfortunately.
I think so. But he's going to generate wind for you. Does have the similar power. But the K rate's going to be similarly, maybe even higher.
Look, you turn the wind power into money. You sell that as energy. You save on your energy bills.
That's called progressive field. Come on, Justin.
Yes, wind energy. Convert those dollars into players. You're saving money on energy because you're using wind energy, and you put that money on the field instead of pocketing it. But who knows? No Luke Voigt. The Jock Peterson thing, though, I don't think you can fairly say, we have payroll flexibility to add talent. Okay, that's great. I can't say fairly you can count a Cesar Hernandez or an Eddie Rosario in that, because to me, those are bargain deals that you do to make your club better when there's a good deal to be had. Payroll flexibility to me is adding a significant player. I think you when you say things like that, it's flexibility to bring in. I'm not saying you have to go out and sign Freddie Freeman or even Nick Castellanos. I don't even want Nick Castellanos, and he's going to cost a lot of money. I'm not even saying that. I'm just talking about adding a little, somebody who doesn't make $5 million a year. We're talking maybe $10 to $15 million player. And money doesn't really matter here. I'm just saying the caliber that deserves it is what I'm talking about. So like a Michael Conforto, okay? Michael Conforto is the guy you say we have payroll flexibility. You add him, and then Cesar Hernandez is your bargain on top of that. Look, their payroll is in the 50s. You can't say we have flexibility and then say, we're going to sign an $8 million player. That's our flexibility. No, that's not flexibility. That's a bargain player. If you want to say that's your flexibility, I'm sorry, you don't have flexibility. You just have the bare minimum to fill out your payroll.
Flexibility is bringing in your Trevor Story. Giving Trevor Story an 8-year deal like Matt Olsen just got. That's payroll flexibility. Yes. That's your point. And I agree with that. And, I think all of Cleveland's fans would get behind the team if they did that. I tweeted earlier today that I would love to see Cleveland go after somebody like Chris Bryant. Well, I don't mention Kyle Schwarber, who I would love to see in a Guardians uniform, because I know that he's almost strictly a DH first baseman. Yes, he can play left field if you call it that, but he should play first base or DH. And I think, Schwarber's market's going to get held up because of Freeman. Teams are going to be in either or, because you're hearing the Jays on Freeman and Schwarber. So which one is it? You hear the Rockies in on Chris Bryant, and I think to myself, if the Rockies can afford Chris Bryant, well, never mind. But the Rockies have been so far, getting a few players, so.
I don't know what the Rockies are doing, man. I just don't know. I'm so confused by that.
They're going to ruin these guys and then trade them away, and, it just continues to churn.
I guess. Chris Frye would be great. Kyle Schwarber would be great. Kyle Schwarber, again, he's not a great left fielder. Although he was okay last year. I don't know if that's because he played a lot of games at Fenway Park that might have saved him. But
that big wall back there.
Right, exactly. I think like ideally signing someone who's a left fielder and a first baseman is good, because if you put Schwarber in left field, and look, Cleveland's got the mini monster. If the big green monster kind of helped Kyle Schwarber play left field last year at an adequate rate, the left field wall in Cleveland is the mini monster. He could do that here, but you could also put him at first base if Bobby Bradley flops and you need someone to play there. Like, you're giving yourself cover. Like, let's say they sign Kyle Schwarber, and Bobby Bradley's terrible. Well, Bobby Bradley loses his spot to Kyle Schwarber, and guess who's in left field? Stephen Kwan. So you automatically upgrade 2 spots in your lineup by going to Kwan, and you still give Bobby Bradley his chance, and if he squanders it, you have Schwarber at first base. I think it makes sense. I don't know. Will they do it? Probably not, but I'm just saying it gives them cover. There's a little flexibility there in that kind of deal. And again, that's the kind of player we're talking about. If that is your payroll flexibility, then yes. But anybody else, man, that's just bargain hunting. Like, in 2012, we talked about Michael Bourne. They signed Swisher first to a nice big contract, and then they signed Swisher after that. Or Swisher first, then Bourne, because he was still out there on the market. And even that was a big deal.
Yeah.
They got a bargain for him, but it was still a massive contract. Did it work out? No, it didn't work out. Because players like that often don't. So we're not saying, neither of us is advocating for them to go out and sign a 35-year-old player who doesn't fit and is not going to return the value on the contract. No, a Schwarber or a Bryant or a Conforto are going to return value, I think.
Castellanos.
Yeah, I saw someone tweet this earlier today saying, he's the perfect fit for Cleveland. I've never been more convinced that this player is the perfect fit for Cleveland. He is not the perfect fit. Nick Castellanos is a terrible outfielder. I'd have to look at his spray chart to see what would have happened if he played in Cleveland last year. I don't want to just use home road splits because that can be deceiving. But if you look at his home road splits, he was great in Cincinnati and he was mediocre on the road. So if you're paying for a mediocre hitter, again, who, like, if you put Nick Castellanos in right field in Cleveland, is he an upgrade today? Yes, he is an upgrade, but your bar to upgrade isn't that high. So that's kind of a default.
That's upgrading over me in right field, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
they've not been getting a lot of production out there.
Yeah, so no, for what Nick Castellanos is going to cost for his defensive shortcomings, and you're getting a guy who really isn't going to have the impact here that he did in Cincinnati, then no, he doesn't make any sense for them at all. That's one of the guys I would not advocate for signing. So don't spend money stupidly. Go out and spend your money. Even I don't know how much Matt Olsen was going to make in arbitration this year, but
he was projected at $10 million.
Okay, more than worth it. Way more than worth it.
Yeah. Which is why Cleveland would be interested in him too, because it's kind of like the Jose thing. Is they've got a bargain for the talent and the output that you're getting.
So bottom line, if they sign Jock Peterson, that's fine. Jock Peterson's a lot like Castellanos. He's an average ball player who, yes, he is an upgrade over Bradley Zimmer and Oscar Mercado in your lineup. Yes. He's not an impact upgrade. You're talking about, like I said, going from an 85 WRC plus to 102. Like Michael,
and what if you rotated, for example, with Franmil Reyes? What if you put Reyes out in the outfield, and just rotated the two of them? You're probably still going to get a below average outcome in right field.
And even defense isn't the problem here. That's not the issue. The issue is even offensively, he's still not a major upgrade.
What was his weighted runs created?
Well, Jock is projected by Zips to come in with a 106 WRC plus this year. And for reference, Michael Conforto had a bad year, quote unquote, bad year in 2021. His WRC plus was 106. So they're projecting Jock to have a bad year by Michael Conforto standards. That tells you the difference in impact. And obviously these projections are not always 100% accurate, but they're conservative. So if Jock's projection is as good as Conforto's down year, that tells you the difference and how much money they're going to get. So you're right. Jock Peterson has not had an above average season offensively since 2019. We can throw 2020 out, obviously, because, that doesn't make any sense. He was not good last year until the postseason. I think he got some bad luck.
I think he was much better when he got to Atlanta and settled in there.
He had some bad luck. If you look at his numbers, so his average exit velocity was about as always normal as it was for his whole career, and he's had a lot of good years before this. So his average exit velocity was as good as it has been. He had a better hard hit rate last year than any year in his career. Same barrel rate as normal. Max exit velocity has sustained. So he had 238. Expected batting average had him at 243. He slugged 422. Expected slug was 440. So if he ends up not having bad luck based on expected stats, he probably winds up as a 100 WRC plus player, and he was at 94. So he's a league average hitter, and unfortunately, that's what Cleveland. That's an upgrade for Cleveland as a league average hitter. So, but that's the thing. This is Jock Peterson's fine, but it's only good if it's not your only move. That's the thing. So
I asked you the question earlier. Where do we go from here?
Well, I don't know. Trade. As far as the trade market's concerned, I don't know who else. I mean, you might as well forget Brian Reynolds. I don't think that's happening at this point.
I don't, maybe Mullins. You push on Mullins and trying to get Mullins away from the Orioles.
Maybe he's a good player. I don't know. I don't know. They're definitely not ready to contend. Not with that pitching rotation. So maybe. I don't know if a trade option exists for them now. I'm trying to look around to see who fits. Like, I know you've pushed around Garrett. Yeah, okay, Meadows. Yeah, Austin. That's a good point. Let's get to that.
I don't think the Cubs are going to sell, so we might as well not even talk about Contreras or Happ. My opinion.
Yeah, that's over.
When they're pursuing guys like Correa, I don't think they're selling.
So Tampa Bay is supposedly in on Freddie Freeman. So I saw some Rays fans speculate that if they signed Freddie Freeman, they would trade Austin Meadows. And one of our listeners, Kevin Sheed, asked, what do you think it would take to get Austin Meadows? So let's answer that question. Austin Meadows has 3 years of club control left. He would bet. Now, we didn't talk about this. We didn't talk about if they take away the shift next year, which could happen. It's not happening this year, but it could in 2023. He could benefit greatly from the shift being banned. He's got issues against lefties, I think, but so what are you giving up, Willie, if you're going after Austin Meadows? Because let's say Tampa Bay signs Freddie Freeman and they decide that they're okay moving on from Meadows to replace some other spot in the roster. What are you giving up?
So they're in the same position that Cleveland is as far as 40-man roster and needing to roster people. And they have this continual roster churn every single year. They've created that by design, give themselves a number of options. They're also in on Suzuki and hope to get him. And if they move Suzuki, I think that, or I'm sorry, if they sign Suzuki, then you know that they're going to probably move Meadows. They also have Manuel Margot, who has 1 year remaining, and they pretty well told Kevin Kiermaier that he's not going anywhere. I think that's because they're not going to trade his $12 million contract unless they buy down a bunch of it, so he's not going anywhere either. I think both of those guys are in the last year or two of their deals. Do they really want to trade Meadows when he's got 3 years? I don't know what their depth in their outfield looks like. So I'm going to guess that they're going to ask for a player like Stephen Kwan, who I don't want to trade to them for obvious reasons. I want to be able to use Kwan in my lineup later in the year. Another player I would bring up to them would be Richie Palacios, because they like guys with versatility. I would push in that direction and then try to go possibly with a second prospect that's very young that doesn't need to be rostered for a while. You know, is that going to be like a guy like Jake Fox or another young player, kind of like they got, I can't remember his name, the one that they traded for Tobias Myers.
Caminero.
Yep.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Tampa Bay asked for John Kenzie Noel, because you mentioned that Tampa Bay likes versatility. Well, they also like guys with high exit velocities. That's why they love Yandy Diaz. I would bet they asked for Noel. And I don't know. That's a tough ask. I don't know. You have to be really sure Austin Meadows is the guy that's. I could see them being interested in Nolan Jones, maybe.
Yeah.
Young pitching, you can go any which way with young pitching. These two teams have matched up obviously a lot before, so there's familiarity there. I'll watch to see how that one plays out. But there's definitely probably a match. Possibly to be had,
and that
there.
Could be one that could be expanded too. I could see them wanting to get another player, like you said. Maybe it's Palacios and Jones or something like that, and then Cleveland gets back one of their relievers. That's something that Cleveland wants to do, is add a couple of bullpen arms. Antonetti mentioned that. They got a couple catchers. I don't know if Cleveland would have interest in Rene Pinto or Ford Proctor or not, but there's some talent in the Rays system, just like there is with Cleveland. Cleveland doesn't need more young players, but they could use some catching depth, so who knows? But I think you expand the deal maybe and see what you can get done that way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you've had past trades with those teams, it's much easier to work trades out. So that could come to fruition. I'll be curious to see it depends on what Tampa Bay does. If they sign a Freddie Freeman, or if they sign, say, a Suzuki, which is really interesting that Tampa Bay is looking to spend money. That's a bad look for Cleveland. If they're doing that, so we'll see.
You mentioned something that we haven't talked about yet, so I wanted to bring it out. I know you want to get to some questions, but I wanted to bring out something you said because I think people need to hear it. But you mentioned how the short timeline is not beneficial for Cleveland's front office. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious, right? I think that Cleveland always has a wait. I don't want to say a wait and see approach, but they let the deals come to them. They love to wait back. They love to get value. That's what makes them hard to trade with, is because they set their value on players and prices, and they don't back off. So trades happen when other teams meet their value. Same with signings as well. So the fact that all this has to happen, sometime in the next week or two before the end of the month, I don't know. If I guess, guys can fly between Florida and Arizona, and all the spring training complexes in Arizona are close enough. But those are just trades. But look at the Matt Olsen thing. That happened very quickly because Oakland was motivated to deal Matt Olsen, and Atlanta didn't want to be caught if Freddie Freeman doesn't re-sign with them and Matt Olsen gets traded. So they were aggressive and they got him. That is not Cleveland's style. And I think it hurt them a little bit there. if Freddie Freeman, if Atlanta waits and Freddie Freeman goes back to Atlanta, I think Cleveland's got a chance to get Matt Olsen. But because Atlanta was proactive, they wound up with him, and Freddie Freeman's still going to get a massive deal somewhere else anyway.
Yeah.
But that's not Cleveland's style. So the fact that they're kind of a wait back approach doesn't fit.
Let the deals come to you, so to speak, instead of going and aggressively pursuing them. When you're aggressive, sometimes you end up overpaying, and that's why they're not aggressive. They don't want to overpay. Mm-hmm. It's part of what they've done for years. And there's been articles on Fangraphs where I think Longenhagen has mentioned that teams kind of dread working with them on trades sometimes because they like to kind of drag their feet, and they are very procedural, if you will. They do everything by the book and check all the boxes all the way, and this is their process, and they're going to stick with their process, and their process isn't going to change. And in a quick market, that process is not, it's not as effective, and I think that's part of what we're seeing now.
Mm-hmm. And they're not willing to leave their comfort zone. That's the thing.
And teams not matching up on value. I think that's another thing. Is you can't, just because it looks good on paper and it looks good to us, we don't know what the other team is asking for. What if the ask for Winker, for example, was, oh yeah, we'll trade you Winker and Winker alone, but it's gonna be Daniel Espino straight up, and Cleveland says no.
Right.
That.
Yeah, and who knows? Does this Matt Olsen deal? Does Atlanta pay that much 3 months ago? Did they pay more because of the accelerated timeline? Because they jumped the market before Freeman's. I think we thought that Matt Olsen wouldn't get traded until Freddie Freeman signed, right? And instead, Atlanta jumped the market, and because they didn't want to be caught without a chair in musical chairs at first base, and did they pay more because of that? You're probably right, and maybe they wouldn't have had to do that back in December, but they couldn't because of the lockout. But yeah, this is the thing. This is a unique circumstance that is it's not going to happen again for hopefully never, but it might happen again in 6 years, the next CBA. But this is a one-time unique situation. So don't expect Cleveland. They're not going to change because of this situation.
Yeah, they're more likely to make a deal with a team that they're already familiar with, like Tampa or, the San Diego Padres, which is the exact reason I brought those out earlier, as we've been talking. The teams like Cleveland, that's very procedural or very by the book, so to speak, you're more likely to strike a deal with a team that you're very familiar with and that you've worked deals with recently in the past. And that's where I think Austin Meadows could be in play. But I think that's one that it probably gets expanded on both sides, where both teams are happy. Cleveland gets a reliever and Meadows, and then Tampa gets maybe Nolan Jones and another player or something like that.
Yeah, it's going to be a wait and see kind of thing, depending on what Tampa Bay does. It may be if more guys that Cleveland's not interested in, like a Trevor Story, a Carlos Correa, Chris Bryant, Seiya Suzuki. If Cleveland's not in on those guys, maybe that greases the skids a little to get things going, and they can maybe start working on trades. Because to me, the trade makes the most sense because the roster imbalance still doesn't make sense, not with how many infielders are on the 40 that aren't going to be Major League ready this year, like Tana and possibly Freeman and Noel, those guys that aren't ready for big league action yet, makes the roster imbalance so strange. So that's why a trade still makes the most sense. But yeah, they're not going to change their approach just because of this unique circumstance. That's the thing. So this is why this is happening. Got a quick comment from our friend Plutorius. If Jock Peterson is the signing for the G's, not one of many, we're going to be sitting and waiting for an excruciating amount of time while their teams make deals, including division rivals. That's already happened. Thanks for the comment, Plutorius. That's already happened. The Twins have gone out and improved their team. They've been very active, and the White Sox don't really need to do much, but they've done some things. And
I think Minnesota is probably one of the teams in on Trevor Story.
They are. I guarantee. I think that's why they traded Donaldson. Yeah, that's why they offloaded his money.
Yeah, I saw that move, and that was the first thing that occurred to me. Is like, first of all, who's their shortstop? I don't even remember who their shortstop is. So they need a shortstop. Trevor Story would make a lot of sense, and can you get him for 200? Or maybe a little bit more than that. I don't know. I don't know what Minnesota is willing to pay, but that's a move I would not be surprised to see Minnesota do. They're very similar front office, but they seem to be a bit more aggressive than our front office. So I'll bring up another point.
Because they have Derek Falvey,
who came from Cleveland. Yeah. So you kind of get the Cleveland MO, but you get it with a more aggressive approach, it seems like.
Works out well. Let's real quick. Let's go through. We don't have to spend a lot of time on Luke Maley and David Frye, and let's get to our questions. Luke Maley, I don't know. I wrote him up. He's going to be tomorrow's player profile on GuardiansBaseballInsider.com, so go check that out. Those are not behind any paywall. So the player previews is me, Alex Hudak from 216 Baseball Podcast, and Joe Collins, who is our Guardians reporter this year, a student from OU. Give him a follow on Twitter. But I wrote up Luke Maley for tomorrow. Good defensive skills, can throw out runners, a solid adding to defensive run save behind the plate, can draw a walk. That's about it. It's like the Austin Hedges profile. He can walk, he can play defense, doesn't do much else.
Yep.
That seems to be what their bar is for their catchers.
Yeah, they put a high emphasis on defense. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Antonetti mention yesterday that they are still open to adding to the catching position? Is that right?
Yeah, they're still open to upgrades. They said yes if they present themselves. They didn't say we're not looking at catcher anymore. No, they said it's still a place they would consider an upgrade if the opportunity presented itself.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means.
Maybe they make a package deal with Oakland and go after Murphy, who I've been kind of pounding the table for. Excellent defender, a much better bat than Austin Hedges. You could always include Austin Hedges in the trade, and you're not really giving up the future with Lavastida, so to speak, and Bo Naylor. And they have Shea Langoliers. I don't know. I'm just thinking that there is ways to upgrade the catching position. That would definitely be an upgrade at the catching position. And then maybe you can bring back a Ramon Laureano with him or something like that, or even a Chad Pinder or Lou Trevino.
Yeah, I would say the problem with Murphy is you're not buying him for the bat. You're buying him he's an offensive upgrade over Austin Hedges, but you're buying him for the defense in his youth because he's controllable long term. The bat's a little bit better, but yeah, if that can't be your only bat upgrade, as far as bats are concerned. So,
and that's why you would look for another piece in that sort of deal. Even you would look for the Laureano, the Trevino, or even Chad Pinder, who would be a utility type guy, but he would be useful for Cleveland because if you're stuck with Brad Zimmer or even Jock Peterson in right field, you can always put Pinder out there with him, and you have a pretty good platoon going on right there.
You want to add anything on Maley, or I think we covered it all?
No, defensive guy, like you said. I think if I remember, and this is from reading a scouting report, but it was an above average arm. I've seen him a little bit when he was with Pittsburgh playing and thought that he was a good defender. Didn't really see a whole lot of him at bats. I know he was with the Blue Jays last year and then Milwaukee. So again, front offices that all have ties to Cleveland. A reason that I mentioned him jokingly with you earlier in the offseason, and here we have it. It's my fault that Luke Maley is our backup catcher right now.
Yeah, that's kind of it. It's Hedges and Maley. And then David Frye came over as the player to be named later for J.C. Mejia from early in the offseason. David Frye has got some pop. He's about an average defender, which is pretty good. About a 2 pop time as far as catcher is concerned. He's throwing runners out at a decent rate. Not sure about framing, but
he's played everywhere but shortstop and center field. So
yeah, he's got some defensive versatility. Not a great hitter, but he has more pop in his bat and more game power than some of the other catchers, more than Luke Maley at least. So
yeah,
he's not on the 40, but a good third catcher.
Yeah, exactly. If you have to call him up, you call him up, and then you option him back, and you don't feel bad about it. He's not going to stand in the way of Lavastida or Naylor for the future, or whoever. If it's Murphy or they bring somebody in, but it's a good guy to have as a depth option, and he has versatility. And what team doesn't like a guy like that?
Yeah, no, you're right, 100%. I think he's a good fit. I joked. He said he's the number 3 prospect in terms of catchers now, and it's not really a lot of praise, but he is their 3rd best catching prospect now. So there's that. Yeah, good. That's a good get for JC Mejia. Really, that's as good as you're going to get. So
I think you get a 40 catcher utility man for a 40 bullpen arm.
Yeah.
When you get in a position of need like that, and one that they particularly needed after the death of Andres Melendez, it was kind of a foregone conclusion that player to be named later, to me, was going to be probably a catcher from the Brewers because they had some depth in the system. I think that he was the player all along, but he would have been Rule 5 eligible, and Cleveland didn't want to name him and then end up losing him if there was one, so they held off until a few days ago.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to Jamie Renner's questions. 2 questions. His first question was, he'd love to know what the future holds for Med Rosario. Is he traded or does he finish his contract in Cleveland? I'll say he's traded at some point. I think there's enough shortstop talent in the system where eventually they're going to have to trade him.
I think he's traded mid-season.
This year?
This year.
Wow. Okay. I would have to agree. I wouldn't be surprised if he's traded sooner. I think that
I mentioned Myers earlier. That would be a way that you could offset a little bit of Myers coming, salary is sending him out to San Diego, and San Diego could use some infield depth right now after Tatis broke his wrist and is going to be out for the next 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that happening. You're right, absolutely. There's your way to get Will Myers, or I don't know, and Robert
Hassel, really. But
yeah. Jamie's other question was, is anything going to change when this ownership takes over? Meaning David S. Splitzer. That's a whole podcast by itself, to be honest with you. I don't know if we have time to do it today, but we haven't heard a lot about it. I will say Zach Meisel from The Athletic did say, I don't know if it was on his podcast or if it was on one of his radio appearances last week. He said that essentially that getting David S. Splitzer approved as the minority owner is all but done. It just needs, the T's crossed and the I's dotted. It needs approval from league ownership, but I guess the deal in terms of Splitzer and Dolan is done. They just need league approval. That'll get done. I don't know when, but initially, I think things will change. I think initially they will spend more with David S. Splitzer around when he becomes majority owner, which is supposed to be around 2025, according to other articles out there I've seen. It's TBD. I don't know. I think we have to learn a little bit more about him before we can say that. But at least from experience, we know that when there is a minority owner involved with the organization, payroll goes up. With John Sherman, it did. So I think it's reasonable to assume more money will be spent with David S. Splitzer, and hopefully that happens soon. I hope the Dolans know it's coming, and they just spend the money now, knowing that money's coming from David S. Splitzer here soon. That's my hope. So yes, in the short term, long term, I don't know yet.
I'll go with the same. I mean, I agree. We don't know yet.
Yeah, I wish we knew. Let's go to Kevin Sheed. Why is it so painful being a fan of this team? Well, I hate to say it. It's kind of the point we just talked about, right, Willie? It's that
we started the show talking about the Browns. So, people from Northeast Ohio are gluttons for punishment.
Why is it painful to live in Northeast Ohio? That's the real question that Kevin is asking. Why is it painful to live here?
We got brain freeze from the cold.
It's cold. The Browns are stupid. The Cleveland is boring. The Guardians are boring. The Cavs are fun.
Healthy.
Yeah. why is living in Cleveland so hard sometimes? I don't know. No, I think being a fan of this franchise is hard because A, there's the money aspect, yes, but B, I think it goes to the point we just talked about. The front office is methodical and they don't change their they don't change their process unless they're given a good reason to. And right now, the process doesn't fit the situation very well. So that's why it's very hard right now, is because they're not going to let a temporary situation change the process that works for them. And it's just, unfortunately, it doesn't work out for them in today's situation.
For fans. It's not convenient for us because we want them to do something and then we want them to do it right now. And that's not how they work. And that's not how they've been successful. They've not found success that way. They're going to stick with what they know and what has been successful for them.
For sure. And then we talked about Austin Meadows. That was a question from Kevin. We answered that. So, Kevin, appreciate the questions. Glenn Longwell. Let's go with Glenn's question. With the new system, we didn't talk about this with the CBA. With the new system in place, is there any chance that Stephen Kwan or Gabriel Arias make the opening day roster? So the new situation is this. Teams can get additional draft picks if a prospect on the roster makes the opening day roster and wins an award or finishes in the award voting. So let's say Stephen Kwan makes Cleveland's opening day roster and he finishes top 3 in Rookie of the Year voting. Cleveland gets a draft pick. I don't know how that all works out specifically, but they get some sort of draft compensation for that. So, I think I don't know. I think it increases the chances. Yes.
I think it does with Kwan anyways. I don't know about Arias unless they trade Rosario in the meantime, which I don't really expect. Like I said, I think Rosario goes mid-season, but who knows? I think Kwan is more likely of the two.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think I think it does increase chances, though. I did like that part of the CBA. So, good question. And help us get to that as well. Our own Stacy Hannon, to the pickups of Luke Maley and David Frye, take Sean Murphy off the table. Well, Willie, you kind of answered that. It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like the team will consider an upgrade if the opportunity comes along. And Sean Murphy, I think, is that the one opportunity left that might make sense. So,
yep.
Organically, we answered that one. Quincy, our buddy Quincy Wheeler. Who is the one guy you feel like is most likely to be added to the roster that is not on the team at the moment? Brian Shaw, right? It's Brian Shaw.
Brian Shaw.
It's Brian Shaw. Oh,
we could do an Andrew Miller reunion tour. That'd be pretty cool.
Isn't he still on the Cardinals? Is he a free agent?
I think he's a free agent.
Oh,
I could be
part
mistaken.
of the CBA.
It's going to be Brian Shaw. I'm telling you guys.
Oh man, Brian Shaw. I'll say Jock Peterson. I don't know. For once in my life, I'll believe John Morosi. I don't know. Yeah, Brian Shaw. Russian Owls got 2 questions. What prospect with 0 Major League service time do you think we'll see most in Cleveland this year? Well, you got a good answer for that? I'm not sure I do.
0 service time, Kwan or Nick Michalowchak? I think Michalowchak will be up mid-year.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to copy off you. I'm going to say Nick Michalowchak. They need another reliever, and they don't have a lot. And, yeah, if they don't add a reliever, there's a spot open for him. Because I can't say Carlos Vargas because he won't be ready in time at this point.
No.
And Russian Owl also wants to know, are we buying the hype on Kwan? Great numbers, small sample size. Yeah, we're part of creating it. No, I'm buying it. I don't know how high I'm buying the hype on, but I'm definitely buying the hype that he's a good Major League Baseball player. Like, he's going to be a league average starter. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think he can be an everyday outfielder. Will surprise some people. Yeah. He's going to sneak up on some people with his power for his size.
Yeah, I talked about this the other day on the Tigers minor league report podcast with Rogelio Castillo and Chris Brown, the guys from there, good guys. And I said, a guy with his profile for contact and plate discipline, now that he can hit 15 home runs a year, that's a nice profile. So our next one is buddy Chuck. He wants to know, he says he's a big fan. Thanks, Chuck. Over under 100 at bats for Nolan Jones and Oscar Gonzalez this year. Under on both.
Yep. I was going to say definitely for Oscar. Nolan, I'm not so sure. I'm going to say under.
I'm going to say under for Nolan. I'm going to say under 100, but not 0 for Nolan Jones. I might even say 0 for Oscar Gonzalez. I don't see a fit. I don't know. Last question from FFEJ's burner. I don't know whose burner this is. Clearly, it's not a burner for Mercado or Zimmer. What's the worst doomsday outcome for the outfield? Mercado, Straw, Zimmer, or Kwan, Straw, Palacios? I don't hate the second one, but it's at least it's different at the very least. Yeah, I think your doomsday outfield is Mercado, Straw, Zimmer, right? That's bad.
Yes,
that should be considered.
I don't think we'll see that though.
Well, that excludes Josh Naylor. I don't know. That would be the doomsday outfield, but that should be some sort of crime against humanity if we see that. That's bad. Oof. All right. Well, Billy, we have gone an hour and a half, and I feel like it's been a great conversation, to be honest with you. For the very little the Cleveland Guardians have done, we sure found a lot to talk about.
Unfortunately, I have to go and put my kids to bed. So
yeah. I got stuff to do too. Check us out at the site, guardiansbaseballinsider.com. Every day we've got a new player preview going up for the major league teams, so those are free for everyone to read. No paywall there, as I said. We've already got Oscar Mercado. Today was Bobby Bradley. Tomorrow is Jose Ramirez. Doing it before he gets traded. We want to make sure we get that profile out there before he's traded to Toronto. And I'm sorry, tomorrow is Luke Maile. Tomorrow is the big off-season signing. I'm breaking down Luke Maile, and then Jose Ramirez is the next day. So we'll still get it in before he gets traded. He'll play one more game as a Cleveland Guardian, and because we'll run his player preview, and then he'll get traded. So check that out every day. We're still doing the prospect rankings and scouting reports. Today was number 20, Tanner Burns. Oh, we're down to number 19 tomorrow. Who is number 19, Willie?
I don't even remember, to be honest with you. Maybe it's Petey Halpin.
It's Petey Halpin. That's why I asked you. 19 is Petey Halpin. Everybody, the podcast favorite, Petey Halpin. You had his scouting report, correct?
Yep.
All right, so he's tomorrow. Yes, check that out tomorrow. Petey Halpin scouting report. Definitely check that out. You can follow me on Twitter, JL_baseball. Again, if you're listening this long and you don't follow me on Twitter, that is wild. Same for Willie. It's Will HOO99 on Twitter. Follow him. Follow the site on Twitter at CGBI, official_CGBI, I should say. I didn't even type that right. Darn. I should be fired from my new job as Cryon director of this podcast. I'm doing a terrible job.
Somebody else is getting a bunch of followers. Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, ever CGBI, as you're welcome for the pre-press. We take donations. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening. If you got this far, and you don't subscribe, please subscribe, rate podcast if you can, leave a review. We really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who listens, the loyal listeners. Thanks for the questions. Willie, I hope to, whatever everybody chooses to pray to, that we are back next week and we are talking about some kind of move. I don't even care if it's Jack Peterson. Just have something next week to grease the skids a little.
Give me a reliever not named Brian Shaw, and I'll be happy.
We'll be back next week to talk about Brian Shaw's return to the Cleveland Guardians. Until then,
the Brian Shaw
thanks
hour.
For listening. The Brian Shaw hour. Oh, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.